Darian walked out of his office quickly. His heart felt heavy with anger and sadness. His girlfriend had said something really mean to him, and it hurt a lot. No matter how hard he tried, he couldn't stop thinking about her words. The more he thought about it, the more upset he became. He walked down the busy streets, hoping that a walk would help him calm down, but it didn't. After a while, Darian felt hungry. He noticed a small restaurant nearby and decided to stop and eat. He sat down at a table and ordered some food, hoping it would help him feel better. But when the food arrived, he just stared at it. His stomach felt tight from all the anger and sadness. He took a few small bites, but his mind was still stuck on the fight with his girlfriend. Why doesn't she understand me? He thought angrily. Why does she always make everything so hard? When Darian finished eating, there was still some food left on his plate. He was too lost in thought to notice much else. He grabbed his coat, stood up, and left the restaurant, but he forgot something important. His wallet was still sitting on the table. Darian didn't even realize it as he walked away, his head full of angry thoughts. Not long after Darian left, a young homeless girl named Talia came into the restaurant. Talia hadn't eaten in days. Her stomach growled loudly as she smelled the food. She was so hungry she could barely think. When she saw the plate of leftover food on the table, her eyes widened. Talia looked around. Nobody seemed to be watching her. She was nervous, but her hunger was stronger than her fear. Quietly, she sat down at the table. Her heart pounded as she reached for the food. She knew it wasn't right to eat someone else's meal, but she was starving. She took a bite, savoring the taste. Just then, Darian walked back into the restaurant. He had realized he left his wallet and rushed back to get it. But when he saw Talia sitting at his table eating his food, he became furious. "What are you doing?" Darian shouted loudly. "Are you stealing my food?" Talia froze, her eyes wide with fear. She hadn't expected anyone to come back. I'm sorry," she whispered softly. "I didn't mean to steal. I was just so hungry." Darian didn't listen. He was too angry to care. "That's no excuse. You can't just take things that don't belong to you." "I haven't eaten in days," Talia said, her voice trembling. "I wasn't trying to hurt anyone. I just needed something to eat." But Darian wouldn't hear it. All he could see was someone eating his food without asking. He told her to leave, his voice cold and harsh. Talia's eyes filled with tears. She stood up slowly, apologizing again. But Darian said nothing. He just watched as she walked out of the restaurant. Her shoulders slumped in shame. When Darian sat back down and grabbed his wallet, something didn't feel right. A small, guilty feeling started to grow inside him. Maybe he had been too harsh. Maybe he should have listened to her. But Darian was too proud to admit that he was wrong. He tried to push the guilt away, but Talia's sad face stayed in his mind. Later, when Darian got home, he was still upset. His girlfriend's cruel words kept playing in his head. He picked up his phone and called her, hoping she had calmed down so they could talk. They were supposed to go to a big fancy party together the next day, and Darian didn't want to go through drama. But when his girlfriend answered, her voice was sharp. She didn't want to talk about the party or anything else. Instead, she made a shocking demand. She wanted a large amount of money if she was going to go to the party with him. Darian was stunned. He had always been generous with her, making sure she had everything she needed. But now she wanted money just to be his date? That felt wrong. He asked her why she needed it, but she didn't give a reason. She just repeated her demand and then hung up. Darian was furious. There was no way he would pay her to go with him. But now he had another problem. He couldn't show up at the party alone. It was the kind of event where everyone had a date. He needed someone to go with him, and fast. Suddenly, Talia's face flashed in his mind, the homeless girl from the restaurant. She may have been living on the streets, but she was beautiful. Even in her ragged clothes and tired state, her beauty shone through. If she cleaned up a little, Darian thought, she would be perfect for the party. It sounded like a crazy idea, but the more he thought about it, the more it made sense. The next morning, Darian dressed nicely and went out to find Talia. He didn't know if she would even be in the same place, but he had to try. He searched for a while, walking through the streets, scanning every corner. Finally, he spotted her sitting on the ground, holding out a small cup for spare change. Her face looked tired, and her clothes were even dirtier than before. When Talia saw Darian walking toward her, her expression changed. She looked angry. She remembered how he had yelled at her. She didn't want to see him. Darian stopped in front of her, knowing this wouldn't be easy. He quickly apologized for yelling at her before, explaining that he had been upset and had handled things badly. Talia didn't care about his apology. Her eyes stayed cold. She asked him why he was there, clearly expecting trouble. Darian took a deep breath and told her the truth. He explained that his girlfriend refused to go to the party with him, and that he needed someone to go with him. He told Talia she was beautiful and said that with a nice dress and some care, she would look perfect for the event. Talia was shocked. She laughed at him, shaking her head. "You yelled at me, and now you want me to go to a fancy party with you?" she said. The idea seemed ridiculous. At first, Talia refused. She didn't trust him at all. But then Darian said something that made her pause. He told her he would pay her a huge amount of money if she agreed. Talia's eyes widened. The money he offered was more than she had ever dreamed of. It could get her off the streets, at least for a while. It could buy her food, maybe even a place to sleep. She hesitated, torn between anger and desperation. Finally, after thinking for a long time, Talia agreed. "I'm only doing this for the money," she said firmly. Darian nodded, relieved. He quickly bought her a beautiful dress, took her to get her hair done, and made sure she had everything she needed for the party. When Talia stood in front of the mirror, she barely recognized herself. She looked stunning in the elegant dress. Her hair was styled perfectly, and her face glowed. She had never felt so beautiful in her life. When Darian arrived to pick her up, his mouth fell open. He couldn't believe how gorgeous she looked. He was speechless. At the party, all eyes turned to them as they walked in. People whispered, surprised by Talia's beauty. She held her head high and walked confidently, even though inside she felt nervous. She wasn't used to such places, but she looked like she belonged. Throughout the night, guests came up to Darian to ask about his stunning date. Darian simply introduced her as Talia, keeping her true story to himself. Talia stayed calm, polite, and charming. Deep down, she couldn't believe she was at a party with rich people who had everything. When the party ended, Darian thanked Talia for helping him. He handed her the large amount of money he had promised. Talia accepted it, feeling both amazed and grateful. She thanked him and walked away. Darian went home feeling relieved. The night had gone perfectly. But when he got home, his father was waiting for him. His father was a strict, old-fashioned man who cared a lot about family. Without wasting any time, he gave Darian an order. He had to find a woman to marry. Until Darian got married, his father said he wouldn't hand over the family company. Darian was shocked. He had never expected this. Without a wife, he wouldn't get his inheritance, his position, or his future. His mind raced. Who could he marry? Suddenly, Talia's face came to mind again. He called her right away. Talia was surprised to hear from him so soon. She thought their deal was over. Darian explained everything and asked her for another favor. This time, he wanted her to pretend to be his fiancée. He offered her even more money than before. He promised to rent her an apartment, so she wouldn't have to live on the streets again. Talia was quiet for a while, thinking. The offer was tempting. She had just started enjoying having money in her hands. And now Darian was offering even more. The thought of having her own home, never begging for food again, was too good to ignore. She agreed. Darian kept his promise. He rented her a comfortable apartment, gave her money, and made sure she had everything she needed. All Talia had to do was pretend to be his fiancée when he introduced her to his family. Finally, the big day came. Talia dressed carefully, looking even more beautiful than before. She was nervous but determined. This was her chance to leave her old life behind forever. Darian arrived to pick her up, and once again, he couldn't take his eyes off her. She was stunning, confident, and ready. Together, they headed to Darian's family home. Both knowing this was just the beginning of a strange new chapter in their lives. Darian and Talia arrived at the big family house. The house was huge, with tall white pillars and a beautiful garden that stretched far beyond the gates. Darian looked at Talia, trying to see how she was feeling. but she stood tall and smiled confidently, just like she had practiced. When they stepped out of the car and walked into the house, Darian's father was waiting for them in the big living room. He looked at Talia with sharp eyes, studying her carefully. He had been unsure when Darian said he was bringing someone home, but now that the time had come, he was very curious to meet this mysterious woman. Talia stepped forward with a calm and confident look. She greeted Darian's father politely, her voice steady and respectful. She spoke with the right mix of confidence and kindness, saying how beautiful the house was and how happy she felt to meet the family. Every word she said was chosen carefully, and every move she made was graceful and perfect. Darian's father kept watching her closely. At first, his face looked serious and doubtful, but as Talia kept talking, his expression softened. She answered all his questions with intelligence and grace. She told him about her background, sharing a story that matched what Darian had told his family. Talia didn't try too hard to impress him, but she didn't have to. Her natural charm was easy to see. Before long, Darian's father was completely impressed. The way Talia carried herself, the way she spoke, it all felt genuine and real. He had expected her to be shallow or only care about money, but instead, she seemed thoughtful and kind. He was surprised, and even Darian noticed his father's change of heart. By the end of the evening, Darian's father was won over. He even pulled Darian aside quietly and told him that Talia was exactly the kind of woman he had always dreamed his son would marry. He said she was beautiful, smart, and very composed. Darian felt relieved but also a little shocked at how quickly things had turned in their favor. His father, who was usually very hard to please, liked Talia almost right away. The heavy pressure of the evening lifted, and things were going perfectly. Talia played her part wonderfully the whole night. She laughed at the right moments, complimented Darian's mother, and even told some stories that made Darian's father laugh, a rare sound in their home. When they finally left the estate that night, Talia had left a strong impression. Darian kept glancing at her as he drove. She had done even better than he expected. For the first time, Darian realized that Talia wasn't just a homeless girl pretending to be someone else. There was something deeper about her, something special that he hadn't noticed before. When they got to Talia's apartment, Darian felt he needed to be honest with her. He looked at her seriously and thanked her for her help. He told her she played her role perfectly, and he couldn't have asked for more. Then he took a deep breath and told her something important. Though he appreciated everything she had done, he didn't love her. He explained that there were no romantic feelings between them, and their arrangement was only business. Talia didn't seem upset. She told him she didn't care about love. She only wanted the money, and that was her reason for helping him. She said she had no feelings for him either, and she made that clear. For her, this was just a temporary way to get off the streets, nothing more. Darian felt relieved that she agreed. He was worried things might get complicated, but Talia's calmness made him feel better. They said goodbye, and Talia went inside her apartment, while Darian drove home. A few days later, Darian's father called him. He wanted Talia to spend the weekend at their house. His father liked her even more than Darian had thought. Talia had completely charmed him, and now he wanted to get to know her better. Darian felt nervous. Keeping this act up was becoming harder, but he couldn't say no. His father's approval was very important. When he told Talia about the invitation, she agreed right away. More money and more time in a fancy house sounded perfect to her. She packed a small bag and dressed her best when Darian came to pick her up. When they arrived at the family estate again, Darian's father greeted Talia warmly, like she was already part of the family. He showered her with compliments, saying how much he admired her intelligence and grace. Talia smiled politely, staying in character. Everything was going according to plan. But Darian's mother wasn't so easily convinced. From the moment Talia walked in, her eyes followed Talia carefully, watching every move. She felt something was strange about Talia, but couldn't figure out what. She also didn't believe the story about how Darian and Talia had met. It seemed too quick and too perfect. As the weekend went on, Darian's father became even more fond of Talia. He liked how smart she was, how kind she was to everyone, and how easily she fit in with the family. He often pulled Darian aside, praising Talia and saying how lucky he was to have her. Darian smiled and nodded, but inside he felt trapped by his lies. Talia did her best to blend in. She talked with Darian's father, laughed at his jokes, and charmed the other guests who visited. But she could feel Darian's mother's cold stare every time she looked her way. The tension was clear. Later that night, Talia told Darian she thought his mother didn't like her. There was something strange in the way she looked at her. Darian sighed and told Talia not to worry. He said his mother could be difficult sometimes, but this was only temporary. Once he had control of the family company, things would be fine. He promised Talia he'd figure out a solution soon. Talia nodded, but she wasn't convinced. She knew Darian's mother was no fool. If she kept digging, she would discover the truth. Still, Talia had already come this far, and the money was too good to walk away from. The weekend ended with Darian's father more convinced than ever that Talia was the perfect woman for his son. He even started talking about wedding plans, saying he couldn't wait to see them married and start a family. Darian smiled, but he felt like he was sinking deeper into trouble. On the way back to Talia's apartment, Darian felt the heavy weight of the situation. He knew he couldn't keep lying forever. His father expected a marriage, his mother was getting suspicious, and Talia, even though she played her role well, wasn't someone he could rely on forever. He needed a plan before things got out of control. Talia, on the other hand, was thinking about how much more money she could get before the whole act fell apart. Meanwhile, Giselle, Darian's real girlfriend, was getting suspicious. Darian had been ignoring her calls and canceling their dates with silly excuses. She knew something was wrong. After hearing that Darian had been spending time with Talia, Giselle decided to investigate. It didn't take long for her to learn that Talia was the same homeless girl Darian had yelled at in the street weeks ago. Suddenly, everything made sense. Giselle realized Darian and Talia had planned this whole thing. Angry and betrayed, Giselle stormed over to Talia's apartment. She knocked hard on the door, and when Talia opened it, Giselle let all her anger out. She told Talia to stay away from Darian, saying he was her boyfriend, not Talia's. But Talia wasn't scared. She smirked, crossing her arms, and listened to Giselle's rant. When Giselle finished, Talia shrugged and told her she wasn't going anywhere. She insulted Giselle, calling her desperate for holding on to a man who clearly wasn't interested anymore. Talia reminded Giselle that Darian had chosen to bring her home, not Giselle. Giselle felt embarrassed and humiliated. She had hoped to scare Talia off, but instead, she felt defeated. Still, she wasn't ready to give up. When she got home, Giselle came up with a new plan. If she couldn't scare Talia away, she would get Darian's mother to help. The next morning, Giselle called Darian's mother and told her everything. She explained how Darian and Talia had lied, and how Talia was just a poor homeless orphan. Giselle emphasized Talia's poor background, knowing Darian's mother would hate that most. Darian's mother was furious. The idea of her son marrying someone from the streets made her feel sick. She had always wanted Darian to marry someone rich and well-connected, not a poor girl. In her eyes, poor people could never understand their lifestyle. She felt Talia didn't belong in their family at all. Her anger grew as Giselle gave her more details about Talia's past. By the end of the call, Darian's mother was determined to stop this. She didn't care about love. She wanted to protect her family's reputation and legacy. Giselle felt pleased. She knew Darian's mother would handle Talia from now on. In her mind, Talia would be out of the picture soon, and Darian would come back to her. Darian's mother immediately began making plans to confront her son and expose the truth about Talia. She believed Darian was making a huge mistake, and she wasn't going to let it happen. Darian was sitting in his office when his angry mother stormed in. Without hesitation, she confronted him about Talia. The moment Darian's mother started talking, Darian knew Giselle had told her everything. His mother was very angry. She demanded to know why Darian had lied to the family, and why he would even think about marrying a homeless orphan like Talia. Darian realized he was caught. He quickly stood up and tried to calm his mother down. He begged her not to tell his father. He explained that this was all part of a plan he had made to get his father's approval. He promised her that he didn't have any real feelings for Talia, and that once his father gave him the company, Talia would be gone. He told her it was all just an act to fool his father, nothing more. But his mother didn't believe him. She told Darian she had seen the way he looked at Talia. She noticed how much time he spent with her, how his eyes softened when Talia was around. She knew this wasn't just an act. She believed Darian had real feelings for Talia, even if he didn't want to admit it. Darian tried to deny it, but his mother shook her head. She was too smart to believe his lies. She reminded him of how much their family had invested in his future. She didn't raise him to marry a girl from the streets, a girl without money or family name. She wasn't going to let all their hard work go to waste because of one girl. She told him that his father would never accept Talia if he knew the truth. Darian sighed and felt trapped. He knew his mother wouldn't let this go easily, but he also knew Talia wasn't someone he could just get rid of. Talia was an important part of his plan. If his father found out the truth, everything would fall apart. When Darian's mother got home that day, her anger was written all over her face. She stormed into the living room, where Darian's father was sitting, reading the newspaper. Without waiting, she told him everything. Talia's poor background, how Darian had lied, and how he had tricked them into thinking he was in a serious relationship with her. She expected her husband to be just as angry, maybe even more. But to her surprise, he calmly put down the newspaper, looked at her, and said he didn't mind. Darian's mother blinked in shock. She couldn't understand why her husband wasn't upset. He explained that he had already grown fond of Talia. He didn't care that she was poor. In fact, he liked her humble background. What mattered to him was that Talia was kind and respectful. The only thing that disappointed him was Darian's lie. He was upset that Darian had pretended his relationship with Talia was real when it wasn't. Other than that, he had no problem with Talia. Darian's mother sat down speechless. She had expected him to share her anger, but he didn't. After a moment, Darian's father picked up the phone and called Darian, asking him to come over. When Darian arrived, he looked tense. He knew this was about Talia. He sat down in front of his parents, ready for a fight. But to his surprise, his father spoke calmly. He told Darian that he was hurt by the lie, but now he wanted the truth. Darian hesitated for a moment, then confessed everything. He told them that at first he didn't like Talia. He had only started dating her as part of his plan to impress his father and take over the company. But over time, something changed. The more time he spent with Talia, the more he saw how special she was. He admitted that he had fallen in love with her. He was scared to tell her the truth, especially after all that had happened. Darian's father smiled and told him he should tell Talia how he really felt. He reminded Darian that sometimes the most unexpected people could change your life. He encouraged his son to take a chance, saying Talia might feel the same way. Darian was surprised by his father's support. The next day, he went to Talia's apartment, his heart racing. He wasn't sure how she would react, but he knew he couldn't hide his feelings anymore. When Talia opened the door, Darian felt nervous. He sat down, took a deep breath, and told her everything. He explained how he had fallen in love with her, how he hadn't expected it, and how much she meant to him now. Talia listened quietly. When he finished, she smiled. To Darian's surprise, she told him she had loved him since the day they went to a party together. She had been waiting for him to say something but didn't want to push him. Hearing this filled Darian with joy. Right then and there, Darian proposed to Talia. Without hesitation, she said yes. They both felt a wave of happiness wash over them, knowing their love was real. Meanwhile, Giselle was furious when she heard about Darian's proposal. She went to see Darian's mother again, hoping to turn her against Talia one last time. Giselle ranted about how Talia wasn't good enough for Darian, saying she was just a poor orphan who didn't belong in their family. But this time, Darian's mother wasn't moved by Giselle's words. She looked Giselle in the eye and said she wanted the best for her son, and right now the best thing for Darian was Talia. She had seen how happy Talia made him, how his face lit up when she was around. Talia had won her over, and now she fully supported their relationship. Giselle was stunned and humiliated. She had no choice but to leave. A week later, Giselle couldn't bear the shame of losing Darian, or her failed attempts to ruin his happiness. She packed her bags and left the country. She moved to Europe, hoping to start over. But deep inside, she was filled with regret. She had tried everything to win Darian back, but nothing worked. Now she had to accept defeat, leaving in disgrace. With Giselle gone, Darian and Talia's life became peaceful. The tension around their relationship faded. 2 months later, after careful planning, Darian and Talia stood in front of their family and friends to get married. The wedding was beautiful and intimate, held at the family estate. Talia wore a simple but elegant white dress. She looked so beautiful that Darian couldn't take his eyes off her. He was amazed at how far they had come. The man who once saw Talia as just part of a plan was now deeply in love with her. As they exchanged vows, Talia's heart swelled with emotion. She had never imagined her life would change like this. From being homeless on the streets to standing at Darian's side, surrounded by love and acceptance. Darian felt the same way. He never thought he would fall in love with someone so different from what he had imagined. But Talia had become everything he didn't know he needed. After the ceremony, as they danced under the twinkling lights, Darian's father raised a toast. He praised Talia for her grace and strength and welcomed her into the family. His speech touched everyone, even bringing tears to Darian's mother's eyes. She had once doubted Talia, but now she saw her true worth. She no longer cared about Talia's past. What mattered now was the future they were building together. As the night went on, Darian and Talia found a quiet moment to sit together under the stars. Darian held her hand and told her how grateful he was to have her in his life. Talia smiled and promised she would always be by his side, just as he had been by hers. They both knew they had faced many challenges, but their love had grown stronger because of them. In the weeks that followed, Darian's father officially handed the company over to him. With Talia by his side, Darian felt ready to take on the responsibility. Together, they started planning their future, both in business and in life. Talia, who once struggled to survive, was now helping Darian with his work. She shared her own ideas and thoughts, becoming more than just his wife. She was his partner in everything. Dear friends, what lessons did you learn from this story? We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story, give it a thumbs up, share it with your friends, and don't forget to subscribe for more.